The door slammed open before I even finished writing the date at the top of my notes. I did not hear footsteps. I did not hear a warning. One moment Professor Yule was talking about cell structure, and the next moment, a boy named Colin Marsh was standing in the doorway with a long knife in his hand, breathing hard, his eyes wide and wild like an animal that had been cornered. 40 of us sat frozen in our seats. Nobody screamed. Nobody moved. The only sound in the room was the low hum of the ceiling lights and Colin's ragged breathing. "Nobody move," he said. His voice shook. "Nobody move, or I swear I will do something you will all regret." I felt my whole body turn to ice. My hands gripped the edge of my desk so hard my fingers hurt. I did not dare look away from him, but I also did not dare look directly at him. I stared somewhere near his shoulder, the way you learn to do when you are afraid that eye contact will make things worse. Colin had been expelled that morning. I found this out later, but in that moment, all I knew was that a boy I barely recognized was standing in our only exit with a blade in his fist, and none of us had anywhere to go. He started shouting about the school board, about unfair grades, about people who had ruined his life and never listened to him. His words came out fast and broken, and the knife in his hand shook with every sentence, like his fear and his anger were fighting each other for control of his arm. I sat 2 seats away from a girl named Mira Hale. She rarely spoke in class. She kept her notes in tight, neat handwriting nobody else could read easily, and she always sat a little apart from the rest of us, like she was watching the room instead of just being in it. I used to think she was simply shy. I was wrong. While the rest of us turned into statues, Mira did something strange. She did not freeze. She did not shrink into her chair like the rest of us. Her shoulders dropped, her breathing slowed, and her hands, which had been resting flat on her desk a moment ago, closed into loose, ready fists. It was such a small change that I almost missed it, but something inside her had shifted from calm student to something else entirely, and I did not yet understand what that something else was. Colin waved the knife toward Professor Yule, who stood frozen at the front of the room, unable to speak. That was when Mira stood up. She did not jump up. She did not rush. She rose from her chair slowly, the way someone stands up to stretch their legs, and she said, in a voice so calm it did not seem to belong in that room at all, "Hey, look at me instead." And he did. That was the moment everything changed. I have thought about what happened next more times than I can count, and even now it is hard to describe, because it happened so fast that my mind could barely keep up with my eyes. Mira crossed the space between her desk and Colin before any of us understood she had even started moving. Her hand closed around his wrist and turned it, not by fighting his strength, but by guiding it, the way you might turn a door instead of pushing against it. In the same motion, her other hand slid beneath his elbow and lifted, and the knife dropped from his fingers and skittered across the floor. A second later, Colin was on the ground, his arm held firm and harmless behind his back, and Mira knelt over him with the calm weight of someone who had done this before, many times, in circumstances far more dangerous than a classroom. "Someone call security," she said, not loudly, not urgently, just steady and clear. "And can someone hand me my pen?" It rolled under a desk. For a moment, nobody in the room could move. Then, all at once, everyone did. 2 students ran for the door to call for help. Another crawled under a desk to find her pen. I sat there shaking, staring at the girl who had just stopped what could have been the worst day of our lives, and I realized I did not know the first true thing about her. When security arrived, they found Colin held down, embarrassed and shouting to be let up, and 40 classmates standing around one calm girl who was quietly asking Professor Yule if we could still finish the lesson before the end of class. We did finish the lesson. I do not remember a single word of it. I remember only the sound of my own heartbeat and the sight of Mira sitting back down at her desk, as if nothing unusual had happened at all. That evening, I could not stop thinking about what I had seen. I found her in the dining hall, sitting alone with a cup of tea, reading something on a small screen. I asked if I could sit with her, and she waved toward the empty chair without looking up. "You saved all of us today," I said. "How did you know what to do? How did you move like that?" She set her screen down and looked at me for a long moment, as if deciding how much to say. Then she smiled, a small, tired smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Where I come from, everything wants to eat you, outrun you, or outsmart you," she said. "You learn young, or you do not get the chance to learn old." I asked her what she meant, and slowly, over the next hour, she told me about her home. She came from a world the rest of us studied in school as a warning, a place with heavier gravity than most planets we knew, filled with predators that had evolved alongside humans for hundreds of thousands of years, storms that could flatten buildings, diseases that could wipe out a settlement within a season if nobody paid attention, a world where children learned to watch a person's shoulders before their hands, because the shoulders always moved first and told you where danger was really going, no matter what the hands were holding. She told me about her childhood, growing up on a small farm at the edge of a forest full of animals with teeth built for tearing through the toughest hide. She told me how her parents taught her to read the wind before a storm arrived, how to move quietly through tall grass, how to notice when a stillness in the birds meant something dangerous was near. None of it sounded like the peaceful colony worlds most of us had grown up on, with our climate-controlled domes and gentle artificial seasons. Her stories sounded like something out of an old adventure film, except she told them the way someone might describe a normal Tuesday. "You get used to it," she said, when she noticed the look on my face. "You stop thinking of it as dangerous. It just becomes the way the world works." I asked her if she had ever been truly afraid, and she thought about the question for a long time before answering. "Today," she said quietly, "watching all of you sitting there, thinking you had nowhere to go, that scared me more than anything I ever faced back home, because you did not know how to move, and I could not protect all of you at once if I waited too long." Her answer surprised me. I had expected her to say something about facing large predators or surviving terrible storms. Instead, the thing that frightened her most was watching a room full of frightened people who did not know how to save themselves. The following morning, the academy called an assembly. The headmaster, a tall administrator named Dr. Falk, stood in front of the entire student body and explained what had happened, careful with his words, avoiding any details that might upset the younger students. He praised the fast thinking of the student who had stopped the situation before anyone was hurt. Though he did not use Mira's name out loud, he did not need to. Every single student in that room already knew who he meant, because word had spread through the academy faster than any announcement could travel. Some students treated her like a hero after that. They wanted to sit near her at meals, ask her questions, learn her secrets. Others kept their distance, unsure what to make of a classmate who had shown them a side of strength they had never imagined a person could possess. Mira did not seem to want either kind of attention. She kept coming to class, kept taking her quiet notes, kept eating alone with her tea and her small screen, as if the whole event had barely touched her at all. I found myself thinking about her differently after that day, not with fear, though I will admit there was a small amount of that at first. Mostly I thought about her with a kind of quiet respect I had never felt for anyone before. She had grown up in conditions that would have terrified most of us, and instead of becoming hardened or cold, she had become someone who moved toward danger to protect people she barely knew. A few days later, the academy asked her to speak privately with a panel of instructors and safety officers. I was not there, but she told me about it afterward, over another cup of tea in the same corner of the dining hall. They had asked her to describe her actions in detail, to help them understand exactly what had happened and how she had responded so quickly. She said the hardest part was explaining something that, to her, was simply instinct. She was not used to thinking about her reactions. She simply reacted, the way any person on her homeworld would have reacted if a threat suddenly appeared in front of them. "They kept asking me how I trained for that," she said, shaking her head slightly. "I never trained for it. Nobody trains for it. You just grow up knowing that the world can turn dangerous in a single second, and you never stop paying attention, not even when everything looks calm." I asked her whether she was angry that people were treating her so differently now, whether she wished the whole thing had never happened. She looked out the window for a moment before answering. "I do not wish it never happened," she said. "I wish nobody ever needs to feel what all of you felt that day. That feeling of having nowhere to go, no way to protect yourselves. That is the only thing I wish had never happened." Her words stayed with me for a long time after that conversation. I began to understand that what made Mira different was not just her speed or her strength. It was the way she thought about danger, the way she carried the weight of protecting others without ever asking for credit or attention. Colin was removed from the academy entirely and sent away for evaluation and support. I do not know all the details of what happened to him afterward, only that the school made sure he received help, and that stronger safety measures were put in place at every entrance from that day forward. Doors that once opened freely now required identification. Staff walked the halls more often. The academy took the entire event seriously, determined that nothing like it would happen again. For weeks, students whispered about what they now called the day the classroom nearly went wrong. Slowly, though, life returned to its normal rhythm. Lessons continued. Assignments piled up. The fear that had gripped all of us in that room began to fade into something more like memory than feeling. But I never forgot what I saw, and I never looked at Mira the same way again. Where I once saw a quiet, shy classmate, I now saw someone who carried an entire lifetime of hard lessons behind a calm, ordinary face. She did not want to be seen as extraordinary. She simply wanted to sit in class, take her notes, drink her tea, and finish her work like everyone else. One afternoon, weeks after the incident, I asked her if she ever regretted leaving her homeworld to study among people who had never faced the kind of dangers she grew up with. She smiled properly this time, the tiredness gone from her eyes. "No," she said. "Here, I get to learn about stars and cells and languages, instead of just learning how to survive another season. That is worth everything to me." I thought about all the things she had told me, about storms and forests and animals with teeth built for danger, and I thought about how different her early life had been from mine. Yet here she was, sitting beside me, drinking tea, worrying about the same assignments and the same exams as the rest of us. In the end, I think that is what stayed with me the most. Not the speed of her hands or the calm in her voice, as she disarmed a boy twice her size. What stayed with me was the quiet strength she carried every single day, without ever asking anyone to notice it. Our class returned to its normal routine soon after that. New students eventually stopped asking me if the stories about that day were true. Mira remained exactly as she had always been, sitting a little apart, watching the room with quiet attention, ready for anything, even when nothing ever seemed to happen again. I still think about that morning sometimes, about the sound of the door slamming open, and the fear that froze every single one of us in our seats. I think about how close things came to going terribly wrong, and how one person's calm reaction changed everything within a matter of seconds. Most of all, I think about the lesson Mira taught me that day, one she never meant to teach at all. Real strength does not announce itself with loud words or dramatic gestures. Sometimes it sits quietly in the back corner of a classroom, taking notes nobody else can read, waiting patiently for a moment when it is needed, and then stepping forward without hesitation to protect the people around it. I am grateful every day that Mira was sitting 2 seats away from me when that door opened. I am grateful that a girl who grew up learning to survive impossible dangers chose to spend her calm, careful strength protecting a room full of strangers who had never faced anything like what she once knew. And even now, whenever I walk into that classroom and take my seat, I glance toward the corner where she used to sit, and I remember exactly how quickly the world can change, and how much it matters to have someone nearby who knows exactly what to do when it does.